everyone, and welcome into another edition of the Our Coaching Network podcast. I'm John Brice of FootballScoop.com. Pleased to be joined today by Monmouth head coach Kevin Callahan. Coach, Monmouth coming off a monumental win. You're the only head coach in program history. What has it been like this week after notching the program's first ever FBS win on the road, no less, last week at Florida International?
Well, there's no question it was a big win for this year's team and certainly for our program. To go on the road and play an FBS school and to come home with a victory against the FBS school, I mean, it just says a lot about the heart and the attitude that our team has. But I'll be honest with you, after Sunday, we moved on. And I know that sounds like coach speak and all that, but, we've got a tough game coming up this week. And, we enjoyed it. We didn't get home until early in the morning on Sunday. We digested it Sunday, and then Monday we were right back to business, preparing for this week's game against Fordham.
Well, you segued me right into my next question, so I appreciate that. And that would be, what do you learn about your team, not only in the way that it rallied in the second half to win that game, but then the way it processed it and came back to work starting, I guess, on Monday?
Well, I think in a nutshell, I can say they're fighters. I mean, they've got a never say die attitude. We were down by 2 touchdowns going into the half. The attitude and the atmosphere inside the locker room at halftime was extremely positive. There wasn't a person in that room, a player or a coach, who thought, okay, we're out of it. Here's where they pull away. It's, hey, we can beat these guys and we can play with these guys. So let's make the corrections that we need to make. Let's go back out onto the field and see what happens. And as you know, it went down right to the very last seconds of the game, and we were fortunate to come off the field with a win. But once we got back on campus and once we had our meetings and on Monday morning and got to work, I mean, the focus was all on Fordham. I mean, I think our team, the one thing that they know is you can't let the same opponent beat you twice, or you can't live in the past. You've got to go out and move on to the next week and start your preparation. And that's exactly, to the credit of our team, what they've done.
He is Monmouth veteran head coach Kevin Callahan. I am John Brice of FootballScoop.com here on the Our Coaching Network podcast. Coach, I've got to ask, that end of the game play, how much is that teach tape? How much have you guys worked similar drills through the years, particularly this preseason camp? Some people call it the lawnmower. I know other people have different names for it, but I thought your team's play to secure the win and Travis Hunter's play on the goal line to help Colorado secure its win at Baylor were two of the best teach tape examples I've seen in this early college football season.
Well, I'd like to say we practice that every day, but that's something we certainly address. We address those things and practice them in spring practice. We do it again during the preseason period. That was really on defense. It was just a heads up play by Deuce Lee to think about punching the ball out there as the ball got down to about the 1 yard line, and then the fall on it and recover the ball for our team. And then, other than that, we had to get into our victory formation at the 1 yard line and just not lose any ground there. So, you'd like to say, oh yeah, we practice that all the time, but it's something we've addressed with our team. We've taught it to our team, and it was really good to see, that teaching, come to fruition in that situation.
I wanted to ask, and you've already alluded to it, the fact that you flushed it pretty quickly. I wonder what time you got home on Sunday, because it was a later night game, or Sunday morning, I guess. So I wonder what time you got home. But then also, how have you seen your team not living in the past, but carrying the momentum from last weekend forward onto the practice field this week?
Well, I think you hit that right on the head. First of all, we got back, I think it was 5:30 in the morning. Probably coaches didn't get home until 6:30. And then we were back in early in the afternoon to start watching the video and all that. But, our team has a great attitude about them. While they're extremely happy with the win, while it's instilled a tremendous amount of confidence in our players, and they now know what they can accomplish if they put their minds to it and they play together, we're certainly not living in that game that happened down in South Florida. We've got an incredible schedule coming up in front of us. It's going to be a challenge each and every week. And to the credit of our guys, and maybe it's just the older players and the maturity of the group, they came to work on Monday, and every day this week they came to work serious about this week's opponent in Fordham.
I think you're better at my job than I am because you just keep guiding me right into these next questions. I just wouldn't be as interesting an interview as you are, but you just touched on it. You're coming into the meat of your schedule. You're 2-2, but you've got 3 consecutive home games. What do you like about your team? What's the next step for your team as you enter this really pivotal stretch?
Mean, I guess I like our grit. I like our fight. I like our attitude. And trust me, we're not perfect in anything that we do on the field. And we have a lot of mistakes. As a matter of fact, even from last week's games, there's an awful lot of things that we can do a lot better. But I like the grit and the approach that our guys take on a weekly basis. And I attribute that to our veteran leadership. We've got some outstanding older players who are leaders who've been with us 3, 4, 5 years. And they're the guys that are kind of guiding the ship right now. They're the guys that are kind of setting the tone for what we do every day out at practice. They set the tone when we go into the weight room. They set the tone in the meeting rooms. So we're relying on that quite a bit. And, we're just fortunate to have some outstanding players, a guy like Josh Derry and Derek Robertson on the offensive side, our running backs, Rodney Nelson, Sony Ento, who kind of share the load in the backfield. I mean, they're just some dynamic players. And while we're young on defense, we're growing up on defense. And there's nothing like a good win to help you grow up.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. He is Kevin Callahan, the head coach at Monmouth, the only head coach in Monmouth program history, starting there in the early 90s. Coach, I've got to ask you, you're closing in on 200 wins, I think 184 now after last week's milestone win. You've had 16 winning seasons, and right now you're in the midst of your 20th season at or above 500. What has been the evolution of Monmouth football? And part two would be, with that kind of success, you've had to have other phone calls. What has kept you committed and at Monmouth here 3 decades?
Well, I think, realistically, when you look at the 30 plus years that I've been here, it's really been a series of different jobs. When I first came to Monmouth back in 1992, it was about starting a program from scratch. Monmouth University, then Monmouth College, never had football before. And it was about going out and convincing enough young men to come to Monmouth College, and we were going to start a football program. And that year we went out and we brought in 104 freshmen, and that's who we played with in that first season in 1993. Then by 94, we had a winning season. By 96, we won a conference championship. And as we progressed through, back in those days, we were in the Northeast Conference. As we progressed through that, we had the opportunity to join the Big South and right after the 2012 season. And then we were going into full scholarship football. So we went from no scholarships to partial scholar to need-based scholarships, partial scholarships, then to fully funded football by 2013. And we went from 30 and we slowly built our way up to 60. And it was when we hit that 60 mark about year 4, year 5 in the Big South that we really started hitting our stride. And we were playing for championships. And back in those days, it was Monmouth and Kennesaw who played and battled each and every year for the championship. And then after, I guess it was a number of years in the Big South, we made the move to the CAA, and that was still yet another jump for our program. We were going to a higher level of competition where when you look at the teams in the CAA, there's 16 teams in the conference now. It's a battle each and every week. And so we had to adjust to that. We had to up our talent level. We had to improve our recruiting to recruit to the new level that we were in. So I guess that's a long answer to your question, but what's kept me here is the job is ever changing. There's new challenges in each sequence as we've gone through it, and that's what keeps you fresh. The other thing, and I've got to say this, is I've been very, very fortunate as the head coach to have the same nucleus of a coaching staff for the greater part of my time here. Our offensive coordinator, Jeff Gallo, who's doing a fabulous job. I recruited him from high school in 1999. He's still here. He's our offensive coordinator. Our offensive line coach, Brian Gabriel, has been with me since 2003. A number of the guys on our staff have been here a long time. My son is now on our staff, and you could say he's been part of Monmouth football for his entire life. So there's a lot of continuity. That certainly makes my job as a head coach a lot easier when you have that type of continuity from one year to the next. But everybody is certainly bought in, and everybody's focused on the same goal, and that's to put the best product on the field each and every week that we possibly can.
Well, you referenced that jump to CAA. CAA and Missouri Valley are kind of like the SEC and the Big Ten of FCS football. It's just incredibly elite football. The game has changed so much, but you just referenced the continuity and the cohesion on your staff. How critical has that component been, particularly in the era of the transfer portal, in the era of NIL, when FCS rosters, quite frankly, are getting rated. It's been every December and
Yeah.
spring for the past few years. Now
Yep.
I guess it's only going to be December, but just that continuity, how much has that guided what you all have been able to do and the consistency that you've generated at Monmouth?
Well, I can tell you this, you made me think of something with your comment there. We're certainly not immune to being rated. We have our players, we develop them. Our philosophy has always been to recruit and develop. We develop them, they start performing at a high level, and people come looking for them. And we understand that's the way it's going to go. But, to have a coaching staff that's been together for such a long time, it really makes my job easier in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm very fortunate that these guys are still with us and they've been here for such a long time. But there's a high level of trust, and there's a high level that they trust me, I trust them. I don't have to micromanage them. I can let them go about their business, whether they're coaching on the offensive side, or coaching on the defensive side, or in the special teams, and I trust them to do the best job that they can for our players, and I trust them to do what's best for Monmouth University football. And they in turn trust me that I'm going to have their back in everything that we do. I'm going to allow my coaches to go coach, and I'm going to take care of all the other issues that come up within a football program on a college campus on a daily basis.
He is Monmouth head coach Kevin Callahan. I am John Brice of footballscoop.com. This is the Hour Coaching Network podcast. Coach, you're, I think, the longest consecutive tenured FCS head coach in all of college football right now. You've served on national committees. You've taken your team to 4 playoff games. You've had great success. So I want to ask you a big picture question here, and it ties into what we've been talking about. Where do you see in this ever-changing landscape where FCS teams are getting rated, where conference affiliations, particularly at the FBS level, seem to be changing all the time, but there's been changes at the FCS level too. Where do you see FCS football going? How do you feel about the health and the future of FCS football as a whole?
Well, I think there's always going to be a place for FCS football. If you're going to, you look at teams that are making the jump from FCS to FBS, and let's face it, there's several teams that are doing that. There's a huge investment in funds. Not everybody has that type of funding to be able to do that. So I think there's always going to be a market for FCS football. I think the challenges that we're going to face, quite honestly, that depends on some of the impending legislation and how things go down here. But I think that we can continue to recruit, we can continue to develop our players, and let's face it, we're able to bring in some transfers as well. Everybody that goes to an FBS institution doesn't always work out for them, and some of those players are looking for homes as well. So you see a number of those guys that are coming back to the FCS level that become dynamic players on the FCS level. But I think by and large, FCS is still all about recruiting, developing your guys, having an eye on the transfers because those guys can come in and give you some immediate help. And there's going to be a balance that has to be achieved there. At least that's our philosophy here at Monmouth. But I think there's, to answer your question specifically, we're going to find out soon. I don't know if we know all the answers to that yet because it's ever changing.
One of the things I love about the opportunity to host this podcast is getting to visit with coaches all over the country, but not just talking shop. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here and ask you. I try to ask everybody either something that maybe people don't know about you, or I know you've been at Monmouth since '92 and you were at Syracuse and some other spots before then, but what's maybe your first job or one of the weirdest, toughest jobs you've had, and what's something that maybe people don't know about you? Because we've had guys on here who have driven trucks, we've had guys on here who were stocking grocery shelves in the overnight hours and then coaching during the day. Carlos Lachlan, the running backs coach at Ohio State, used to be a prison guard and would change clothes in the locker room or in the parking lot at Memphis before going into work when he was getting started. So what's a couple of things about you that people don't know and a job that you held?
Well, I think I've been very fortunate that I've been coaching college football really since 3 weeks after I graduated from college. And believe me, that was a long time ago. I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to go work at the University of Albany with Bob Ford there, who was a longtime coach in that program. And back in those days, his entire staff was made up of graduate assistants. There was Coach Ford, there was one full-time coach, and there was 10 graduate assistants who came on and really learned the coaching profession from him. And he really took the time to lay it all out for you and explain to you what it was going to take and what you had to do and how to conduct yourself and how to recruit and how to coach basically. And I was very fortunate to have that opportunity. I spent 3 years with Coach Ford before moving on to 1 year at Syracuse, and then kind of my career took off after that. So, but I have to credit the Albany program and Coach Ford, for his mentorship and leadership and getting me to where I am today.
He is Monmouth head coach Kevin Callahan. I am John Brice of footballscoop.com. This has been the Our Coaching Network podcast. Coach, congrats. I know you're not living in the past, but that was a significant win for your program. 3 decades plus in the making. And with that comeback win down at FIU, 3-game home stretch coming up. A lot of meat on the bone out there for your Monmouth program. Good luck the rest of the way. Thank you so much for imparting some wisdom on us today.
John, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.